In 1775, the Continental Congress created the Chaplin Corps. Under the command of General George Washington, each soldier was required to attend worship service every Sunday. While other armies advanced on their feet, Washington's troops advanced on their knees. It's time for the Chaplain's Report with Caleb Colquitt on tactics.
Now, this morning's Chaplain's Report, I think it's very appropriate, and I did not plan this. I really didn't, because you'll remember for the past 2 days, the past two Chaplain's Report we have had, which started on Wednesday, was on the book of Ruth. And I wasn't doing that in preparation for this. I had no idea this article was going to come to my attention. But Ruth is one example of a wonderful woman, and her mother-in-law Naomi also, for the way that a godly woman is supposed to act. And there's some powerful messages communicated in the book of Ruth. So let's look at Ruth 2, 1 through 3. So you may remember, just to kind of set the stage here, this is when Ruth and Naomi have decided to return to Israel. So, my apologies.
No, you messed it up.
There we go. Don't know why my software was messing up on me there. I apologize. So, Ruth 2, 1 through 3. Now Naomi had a kinsman of her husband, a man of great wealth of the family of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabitess said to Naomi, "Please let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain after one in whose sight I might find favor." And she said to her, "Go, my daughter." So she departed and went and gleaned in the field after the reapers. And she had happened to come to the portion of the field belonging to Boaz, who was a member of the family of Elimelech. So this is sort of a God and Naomi working together to play matchmaker here. I don't know that Naomi necessarily intended for her to wind up in this area, but it's not surprising that since they returned to Israel and Naomi was evidently the one doing the leading, that they wound up in the area that she was familiar with. So this is someone who is a relative of Naomi's, a man of great wealth named Boaz. And because they come back to this place, it just so happens, which I believe is God's way of saying divine providence, that Ruth happens to wind up in the field of this man named Boaz. So this communicates a couple of messages here, because you'll see that Ruth has a desire to go into the field of someone whom she might find favor of. So she's going into the fields of those that are more fortunate than she is, because at this point she and Naomi are essentially beggars. Because gleaning was a process where people would leave the corners of their fields, and they would allow that so that people that didn't have any money or didn't have a way to support themselves, they would go into the fields and take those which the reapers left. So you would intentionally leave a portion that you could reap, but you left it for other people that were less fortunate. And so she does this and goes into there. And I think this gives a very powerful message to both men and women. The message to women, I think, is that you need to seek out a man that can provide for you. This is actually a principle that the Bible talks about. When you are going after a man, when you're looking for someone, you need someone that you know is going to have your back and is going to be willing to work to provide for you and to take care of you. And this is especially true because eventually, in most marriages, there comes children. And so because of that, then you're going to have even more mouths to feed. And so if he can't provide for you and he can't take care of you, imagine how useless he's going to be when there's 2 or 3 kids. And so this is a message is saying, ladies, if you do want to set yourselves up for success, if you want to get a mate that is going to be good for you, you need to pick a man that is willing to do the work and is able to provide for you. Because if you are going to marry him before then, if you're going to marry him and you know that he's not really providing for you and you know he's not really doing what he's supposed to do, that just encourages bad behavior. That enables him. Because I know this is unflattering of men, but I am a man and I know how the male brain works. This guy is sitting here thinking, I don't really have to try all that hard with her. I mean, I can just kind of sit here and do nothing or do the bare minimum and she's still with me, so I don't know. Guess I don't have to work real hard. And I'm not saying that women need to constantly nag or berate the men that they're with to provide more things or to get luxuries. And I'm not even saying that you have to be a man like Boaz, a man of great wealth, but you do have to be able to take care of people. And this is a basic truth of humanity that Ruth understands. And because of that, she seeks out a mate that she knows is going to have the means to provide for her and any children that they may one day bear, which is really good for us because eventually Ruth becomes a part of the lineage of David and the lineage of Jesus Christ as well. So, not necessarily giving yourself over completely to a guy who is not willing to provide for you is going to encourage him to do better and to improve his own life and to be able to provide and work harder. Because doing so before this takes place, that's not loving someone, that's enabling them. That is enabling them to continue in their bad behavior. And it also gives a powerful message to men as well. To men, you're supposed to be kind, the kind of man that can provide for other people. This is part of your role. And the Bible asserts this in other places as well. Doesn't mean your wife doesn't help. In fact, when it talks about godly women, this is somebody that does a lot around the household. This is somebody that does a lot to help you and to keep the family together. So it doesn't mean that the wife doesn't have a part to play, but it does mean that you are the primary provider for this particular situation when you are in a marriage like this. But you have to keep in mind you are the stronger vessel. This is something that is mentioned in 1 Peter 3:7. You are supposed to be, because you have a physically stronger body, you're supposed to be the one that is the primary breadwinner for this. And I'm not saying that it always has to be this way, but generally speaking, men are supposed to be this way. And if you can't find a good woman, this may be why. If you're not able to provide for yourself, if you're not able to provide for another person, then this may be the reason that you're having trouble in a relationship, because women instinctively, even if they wouldn't say this, they do know that they need a man that can provide for them and take care of them if it comes to that. And they are well justified in desiring that. That's something that God put in them intentionally and acknowledges this in Ruth. Women really want useful men. And this is something that Jordan B. Peterson has talked about a lot. You may remember that I've referenced him. He's a clinical psychologist and a professor at Toronto University. Really great thinker. I just recently read one of his books. It turns out, in one of his studies, he wanted to find out, are women actually attracted to wealth? And he did several surveys where there would be men that were wealthy, but not necessarily useful. For example, a man that won the lottery and had a continuous payout. So he was always going to be wealthy, but he wasn't very useful. And then they did comparisons with somebody like him and somebody that was but was useful, but not necessarily wealthy. Somebody that was working for a nonprofit, but he was doing really good work. It just wasn't necessarily work that paid all that well. And it turns out that women were far more attracted to the guy that was useful than they were the man that was wealthy. And so women typically use wealth as an indicator, and there's exceptions to this. Some women actually do want the wealth. But women typically use wealth as an indicator of how useful you are. And so it's not that most women are attracted to money or attracted to the wealth. They're actually attracted to useful men. And this is a good and natural instinct that the Lord put in them. And we're seeing Ruth kind of play that out in her practice of going to the field of those who are more fortunate, trying to find favor in someone's sight. The duty of man is to love God and to obey him. And part of that does include taking care of his family and taking care of the people in his life. We are caregivers. We are protectors. We are guardians. That's who God made us to be. And if we aren't that person, in a sense, we're disobeying God. That's something very serious to think about. We need to be men like Boaz. Not necessarily that we have to be wealthy, but we do have to be able to provide enough for ourselves and to be able to help others. And that is something also that is mentioned in Thessalonians, that we work hard for ourselves, but also so that we can help other people and be good stewards of our blessings and assist those around us. The duty of man is to love God and obey him. And when this part is done correctly, when you have men and women working together in concert and understanding this heads off so many problems in relationships. If you have a man that is willing to provide for a woman and is capable of doing so and does, then that really stops a lot of marriage problems before they even start. Because if that is not taking place, that's like the bare minimum. That's the foundation. And if that part is not there, then that's causing so many problems in the marriage that are completely unnecessary. If you can establish that and take care of that, then you can start worrying about other issues in your marriage that are inevitably going to come up. But as long as that's being taken care of, that's a huge step in the right direction to having a godly household. That's something to keep in mind, because there are a lot of great women in the Bible, and we need to emphasize the lessons that their stories teach us, both as men and women. Stay the course, friends.